Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel That Model Railway Guide for another review video, and this time we're taking a look at a brand new 009 loco. This is the tiny Quarry Hunslet from Bachmann, and we've been waiting quite a while for these minuscule locos to arrive. I think they were first announced all the way back in 2018, so it's great to see them starting to come through, and I'm certainly looking forward to having a closer look at this one today. So first off, let's go through some of the specs for this model. As I mentioned, this is a 009 narrow gauge loco, which means it's to the same scale as 00 gauge, but the loco itself runs on 9mm end gauge track. Now, Bachmann have released several versions of the Quarry Hunslet, including both open cab and closed cab versions. Obviously, I've gone for one of the latter versions here, and mine is Britomart in the lined blue livery, which I believe is preserved at the Ffestiniog Railway. The locos have a 6-pin decoder socket if you want to run them on DCC, however I have discovered that they will only take the very smallest decoders like the Bachmann or the Zimo micro decoders. Personally, I would have thought that a Next 18 decoder would have been a better option for these tiny locos, but I suspect that that may be a holdover from them taking so long to arrive. Lastly, the RRP for these models is £149.95 or £127.45 from most retailers, and in fact that's what I paid for mine. It may seem like quite a high price for such a small loco, but don't forget that 009 is still quite a niche section of the hobby. We know from previous releases too that Bachmann really like to go all out with the detail on their narrow gauge models, so I suspect that may justify the higher price tag too. And now, taking a proper look at the model itself, I have to say, I really love the shape and size of the Quarry Hunslets. To me, this is the quintessential narrow gauge loco, and they're very cute. In fact, they could very well be Bachmann's equivalent of the Hornby Peckett, especially considering that they come in a selection of brightly coloured and nicely lined liveries. Speaking of the livery, as I mentioned before, mine is of Britomart in the lined blue livery, and I have to say I really like this sky blue colour, which matches the actual loco perfectly. But what really adds to it is the intricate white lining all around the saddle tank and on the cab. It's not just on the side either, as the front of the cab has plenty of this wonderful lining too, and not only is this a nice detail, but it's incredibly impressive how sharp it is considering the small size of this model. Overall, it frames the loco really nicely, and of course we also have the nameplate printed on the side in red and the builder's plate on the side of the cab as well. Both are really sharp, especially the builder's plate, and hopefully you'll actually be able to read what that says on the close-up. We also get etched plates in the detail pack too, which is always a nice touch that Bachmann include as standard with their narrow gauge models, it seems. The builder's plate doesn't look quite as fine as the printed version in my opinion, but I think that's just down to the nature of how tiny these plates are. That said, I'm certainly glad that Bachmann has included them with these models. Below the footplate we have more of that nice lining on the cylinder covers, and you may just be able to see that we have some lining on the frames too, around the cutouts, which is another nice feature it's great to see has been included. Moving round to the front of the Quarry Hunslet, we have a nice separately fitted lamp bracket over the smoke box, and a very small little smoke box dart too. You may also notice the separately fitted lubricators there, and the vacuum pipe as well. There's also lots of nice rivet detailing all over the smoke box, and further down on the buffer beam too. The buffers are the standard type of coupling that comes with pretty much every 009 loco. They're not sprung, but they do have a little bit of side-to-side play, which will be good for pulling trains round tighter curves. I do really like the tool funnel on this loco too, and it's got that nice band around the top that's been picked out in gold or brass. Another nice touch is the handrail that runs around the front of the loco and back to the cab. I believe this is made of metal and it really looks the part, fitting around the loco perfectly. On the front of the cab we do have that nice separately fitted whistle, which is fantastic, although I believe on the real Britomart there is a pipe that runs up to this which hasn't been included here. I'm not sure why that is, perhaps it's a restriction in the tooling, or maybe it's something that was added to the loco in preservation, but it did strike me as a little odd that it had been missed. Something else you may notice is missing is the famous toolbox that sits on top of the loco in front of the cab, but don't worry, this has been included in the detail pack so you can fit it yourself should you want to. You actually get two different types of toolboxes. I believe earlier on in its career the loco carried a slightly different one, so it's nice to see that Bachmann have provided both options. And you may just be able to see that we also have a couple of tiny lamps too, which can be fitted to the lamp brackets on the loco. Heading back to the loco itself, let's take a look inside the cab, which you can see is very well detailed despite being very enclosed. Naturally, this will be a bit more obvious on the open cab versions of the loco, but it's good to see that Bachmann haven't cut down on the closed cab variants even when that detail is harder to see. Do let me know down in the comments though if you would like me to do a review in the future of one of the open cab versions as well. On the rear of the loco, we've got more of that wonderful white lining which frames the back of the loco really nicely, and again we've got some separately fitted details with the lamp bracket there and the brake pipe too. You may just be able to see some moulded detail too for the coal doors, at least that's what I assume they are, and they were for bringing coal through from a trailer perhaps that was attached to act as a tender. So it's good to see that that detail has also been included. So overall, the Quarry Hunslet is a beautiful little model. It really is a work of art, but now it's time to test out whether its running capabilities are as good as its looks. Now, since I don't have a rolling road for 009 locos, I've just got a section of track set up for this initial test, so let's see how well the Quarry Hunslet runs. You'll see, it doesn't really seem to have much slow speed though, and it takes off fairly quickly, which is a little bit of a shame. I can't imagine doing any shunting with this loco really, unlike my Double Fairlie, which has a very good slow speed crawl. That said, I am running this loco on analog at the moment instead of DCC. Now, I know that doesn't usually make a difference to the running quality, but I do personally find that some locos are easier to control at slower speeds on DCC, so I'll have to see on that one. At the faster speeds though, the Quarry Hunslet is a really nice runner, really smooth and barely any noise at all. It's just a shame that that lower end doesn't seem to be there at all really. With the loco working though, let's now put it to test on a layout and get it pulling a train. So welcome back to my 009 layout Gofod Tynn, and here is the Quarry Hunslet coming out of the shed. As before, it is still pretty speedy, and I would much prefer it to be trundling around the layout at a more realistic speed as it runs to the front of its train. Now, I put it to a vote for my channel members on whether they wanted to see this loco pulling a freight train or a passenger train, and as you can see, they voted to see Britomart pulling some coaches. And as you can see, it's pulling those coaches away really nicely, which is great. The Quarry Hunslet looks right at home here on Gofod Tynn, and with the limited space and tight curves, it really does feel like the perfect loco for this layout. Like Gofod Tynn itself, the Quarry Hunslet packs a lot into a small space, and I really think Bachmann could be onto a winner with these, although the slow speed may be an issue that will put some people off. While I wasn't blown away in particular with the running capabilities, there doesn't seem to be anything wrong with mine in particular. I can only hope that it runs in more over time as it gets more use. One big positive I do need to point out though is that the short wheelbase really doesn't seem to be an issue at all. The Quarry Hunslet is quite happy running over these Pico set track points with their dead frogs, and I haven't seen it stutter or stall on these once. For such a small loco, that really is quite an achievement, and of course that short wheelbase does mean that it will run round the tightest of curves with ease. In fact, we've even seen footage from Bachmann of these locos running round a 2p coin, so they should be more than capable of running round anything a layout can throw at them. By the way, this is all still running on analog DC at the moment, and that's because the special microdecoders that will actually fit in this loco seem to be out of stock everywhere. I did try a DAPL microdecoder, but even that didn't fit, so it does seem like only the branded Bachmann microdecoder or the Zemo equivalent will work in this model, which is a little bit of a shame. That said, there's only limited space in the model, and obviously they can't just make it bigger, but that does mean I'm going to have to wait until I can get my hands on one of those microdecoders before I can run Britomart with my other 009 locos. Perhaps adding a DCC decoder, when I can finally get hold of one that is, will also add a bit of extra control at the lower end of its running capabilities. That's not a guarantee of course, but it'll be interesting to find out. I do think this loco could have the potential to inspire some 009 micro layouts too. Like the Hornby Peckett, I can see people picking up a Quarry Hunslet just because of how nice they look, and then building a small layout to run them on. Hopefully it will introduce more people into 009 narrow gauge modelling, and Bachmann really do seem to be flying the narrow gauge flag at the moment. With the recent announcement and release of the mainline Hunslets in various guises too, it certainly looks like Bachmann have no intention of slowing down anytime soon. Like I said earlier on, there's also the open cab version of these Quarry Hunslets as well, so do let me know if you'd be interested in seeing a review of one of those as well, and maybe I'll have to pick one up to give Britomart some company. Anyway, that's it for today's video. The Quarry Hunslet is certainly a small loco, but I think it's set to make a big impact, and I'm looking forward to running it a lot in the future. If you haven't already, please don't forget to subscribe, or if you want, you can also get early access to videos by becoming a channel member. Just click that join button below this video. For now though, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!